Should you ask a question at the end of your interview process? Hello, I'm Dr. Anthony Llewellyn. I'm an experienced medical HR expert and I'm here to help you manage your career. So one of the questions I'm often asked, or things that we go through when I'm doing preparation with clients for job interviews, is what do I do at the end when they ask me if I have any questions for the panel. And this is a common scenario for most jobs when you're in a panel interview process. It doesn't necessarily happen if you're in one of those multiple mini interview processes, but it often happens in the traditional interview. So what do you do when the process is handed over to you at the end and you're asked if you have a question? Well, here are 5 of my favorite approaches to this question. So the first approach is what I call it the playing it safe approach. For a number of jobs, you've often had a lot of opportunities to actually ask a bunch of questions beforehand. There might be information nights, there might have been a pre-interview, there might be a lot of information provided to candidates before the interview, particularly if it's one of those sort of batch job interview processes where they're interviewing a lot of people for a large number of jobs. So this is the case, and you've put your effort in and you've done your research already, then you can just genuinely say at the end of the interview, no, thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity for giving me an interview today. I feel like I've had enough chances already to answer all the critical questions. I look forward to the outcome of the process. And a number of panel members favour this in that sort of scenario, particularly where you don't feel like you've got a genuine good question to ask. Approach number 2 works when particularly there hasn't been a whole lot of information about the process provided, particularly if it's not clear when a decision is going to be made. So a good question to ask is, in those circumstances, yes, I'm just wondering, do you know roughly when you might be making a decision? Now, again, this only works if it hasn't been made clear to you so far when the decision will be made, but this is useful information for a job candidate. Think about it. If the decision is going to be made in about 2 weeks' time, that gives you an opportunity to email the chair of the panel just to thank them a few days before that decision for the opportunity for the interview, just to remind them that you are a candidate that's in the running. The third approach to the final question is this one. I find with a lot of clients, they come to me for interview practice and preparation because they've had a few unsuccessful attempts at the job interview process in the past. And they often find it difficult because they've found it difficult to get feedback on what it was particularly that went wrong. Now, this could actually be nothing about the interview process. It might just be about their total candidacy for the job, and maybe they're just stronger candidates in the first place. But one of the issues about getting feedback about your interview performance is that if you ask afterwards, generally the type of feedback you get is very vague and not particularly specific and helpful, often because they've been interviewing a lot of people and the notes don't give the sort of specific detail that can be helpful back to the candidates, and also because often interview panels are a bit wary about giving too specific feedback in case a candidate wants to challenge the process. However, there is a unique opportunity to get feedback about your interview performance, and that is actually at the end of the interview. So you could say something like, thank you. One question I would like to ask is, I know you can't tell me the actual outcome of the interview at this point, but is there any specific feedback you could give me about my actual interview performance? I'm always looking for feedback to help myself improve. So that approach does a couple of good things in my opinion. One is, firstly, it might actually provide you with some specific feedback that helps you the next time you do a job interview. Secondly, it also shows the panel that you are interested in feedback and you can take some criticism, and that usually goes a fairly long way in terms of assessing a candidate's worthiness for a job. The fourth approach works well when you feel like perhaps your response to one of the questions you were given wasn't adequate. Perhaps you left something out, perhaps you actually made an error in something you said, perhaps there was a key strength that you wanted to get across that you didn't actually manage to weave into that particular question. If that's the case, you can say something like, no, I don't have any questions, but I just want to go back to that particular question and add something in. Would that be okay? And usually it will be okay. And it can be the opportunity to correct a problem before you leave the interview process. Or as I said, it could be an opportunity to just talk about another strength that you think the panel should know about. The fifth and final approach, and I only generally recommend this when you have a good sense that the interview process has gone well, is to actually kind of talk future orientated. So you ask a question like this: yes, look, I'm just wondering whether you could outline to me, if I was successful in the role, what would be the key things that you'd be wanting to see from me in terms of my performance in the first 6 months. Now, this question does a number of things. Firstly, it gets the panel to think about you actually working in the job, but it also gets them to give some information back to you about what they think is critical for success in the role, and it also shows that you're interested in measuring your performance and making sure that you're doing the things that they want you to do to be successful in the role. With many job roles, there's so many responsibilities and even fairly vague and nebulous selection criteria, it's often overlooked what are the key critical performance areas for that position. So by asking that question to the panel, you also get a bit of a feel as to whether they actually have a good feel for what they expect from the role, which may actually help you to determine whether the job is a good fit for you, particularly if you have some choice about job roles. So there are 5 approaches to the final question. I hope that helps you with your interview approach. As always, I generally recommend going through these things with your interview coach before you go through them in the actual interview. I'll see you for the next tip in a little while.